Commissioner Hamburg, as we discussed last week by phone and other times, I'm thrilled by the FDA's decision to keep crushable generic OxyContin off the market. Young people especially were crushing those time-release pills, the 12-hour pill, crushing it, injecting it, and getting the immediate high from the 12-hour dose all at once. So I salute you for that. That will keep very dangerous drugs off of the street and out of our kids' hands. From a legal perspective, FDA determined that the reformulated OxyContin, the non-crushable one, did in fact possess abuse deterrent characteristics, and that the original crushable formulation was indeed removed for reasons of safety or effectiveness, end of quote. Now that decision dealt with OxyContin, the Purdue Pharma product. How many other drug manufacturers currently have applications for abuse deterrent formulations?
You know, there is another product that is being looked at in that context, not in terms of a specific new application, but in terms of whether or not it in fact meets the criteria for abuse deterrence. This is an important area, and one of our hopes is that we can better incentivize industry to work with us to develop models of abuse deterrence, to strengthen the existing approaches, such as the one used by Purdue in their product, but also develop new approaches, because we think this needs to be dynamic, as unfortunately abusers will no doubt figure out ways to overcome some of the abuse deterrent strategies. So we put out a guidance, as I think you know, about how we think about criteria for meaningful abuse deterrence, and we are continuing to really try to work with industry to encourage more innovation in this area. We would like to see more product applications before us.
What standards will you apply in deciding whether these drugs will be approved and labeled for abuse deterrence?
Well, it's outlined in the guidance, and I regret to say there are 4 criteria, as I recall, but I don't think I can reproduce them for you here. But the critical issue is whether, in fact, it can be demonstrated that they do what they say they do, that, in fact, they behave in ways that will significantly reduce the ability to crush and inhale or crush, melt, or otherwise liquefy for injection these products. And we need to sort of see it scientifically in the laboratory context, and also, you know, some evidence in terms of actual clinical experience.
Well, we want to be sure that the same standards are applied to generics and others as was applied to OxyContin.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you're agreeable with that.
I do. Can I just underscore, though, it's also very important that just because a company claims it's abuse deterrent, it doesn't mean it is. So it's really in everybody's best interest that we try to have standards so that we can really achieve the goal. We don't want the standards to be so high that nobody can actually meet them. Right. We want to incentivize industry to work on these kind of products.
Well, you're doing good work in this regard, because the Center for Disease Control calls prescription drug abuse an epidemic. It's killing more people than car wrecks, especially young people. So your decision so far, I think, will save lives. Let me ask you quickly about rescheduling hydrocodone combination drugs. In late January, the FDA Drug Safety and Risk Management Advisory Committee voted almost 2-to-1 to tighten the restrictions for prescribing hydrocodone combination drugs. You don't have to follow their recommendation, but I'm trying to figure out whether or not you will. and I hope you do. Emergency room visits involving hydrocodone rose from 38,000 in 2004 to 115,000 in 2010. These drugs are often taken with other, in combination with other drugs and or alcohol, one of the most popular being what's called the Holy Trinity, a combination of hydrocodone with a sedative like Valium and a muscle relaxant. The current Schedule III classification for hydrocodone projects a false sense among some patients and doctors that Vicodin or Lortab are less potent or less habit-forming and therefore less dangerous than oxycodone painkillers, which are Schedule II. Prescriptions for Schedule II drugs can't be called in. You need to see a doctor to get a new prescription for each refill after 90 days. No automatic refill. As a result, while almost every opioid painkiller is considered a Schedule II drug and more carefully regulated, the most abused narcotic, hydrocodone, is missing from that list. So I've made pleas by letter to you, and I'm wondering when you will decide this issue and where you think it's going.
Well, it's an ongoing process, as you know. We did have an advisory committee, and of course, important information is discussed, and they made a recommendation to us. We are looking at the information presented in that committee and other information that has come into us from a range of stakeholders with, frankly, differing perspectives on this issue, and trying to address the important issue of balance of access to critical medicines for legitimate medical needs, and the potential, as you note, for abuse and misuse. We will be making a recommendation soon. I can't really speak to the direction that we're going or the specifics of timing, but I can assure you, Congressman Rogers, that when a decision is made, as I did with the other abuse deterrent issue, I will reach out to you and let you know.
Well, I thank you, and I thank you for reaching out to me when you made the ruling on OxyContin. Finally, Mr. Chairman, on the matter of the labeling of the opioid narcotics, which up until now has said can be used for moderate to severe pain, I think it's misled doctors and patients that it's not as addictive a drug as it really is. And we've been pleading with FDA, I have for now 10 years, to restrict the labeling on OxyContin drugs and similar to just severe pain, which it was intended for, I think, in the first place. It's a great drug, a 12-hour release for people who have horrible pain, terminally ill patients. But it's been thrown out there for toe aches and toothaches and everything else, not misleading people that it's not as habit-forming and difficult to kick as it really is. Can you tell me when we might get some sort of indication of what may happen on changing the labeling to strike moderate?
Well, again, Congressman, as you know, we are in a process of consideration of these important issues and what is the appropriate management of acute and chronic pain with respect to this class of drugs, and had a public meeting to hear presentations and get expert and public comment on these issues. We are reviewing that. We take the issue very, very seriously. We believe that FDA labeling and indications for use is an important component of what needs to be, of course, a multifaceted strategy to address this really critical and urgent public health problem. And we, are actively engaged. I want to commend you for the leadership that you've taken on this issue and others in terms of really making sure that adequate attention is paid, and there's a sense of urgency. We do feel that, and are working hard to really address it in a meaningful, scientifically based way.
Well, it shouldn't be a very difficult decision. I can't imagine why we would want to keep moderate pain labeling for such a dangerous drug that's proven a killer around the country. Congressman Frank Wolf and I, 10 years ago, came up to the FDA and testified about this very issue of removing moderate on the label, which invites doctors and patients to use it for less than severe pain, and nothing happened. That was 10 years ago. So we've been sort of a lone wolf out there in the forest crying for help, but now we've got some help. We're not alone anymore. A citizen's petition submitted to the FDA this summer, clinicians, researchers, health officials, all of them asking FDA to change the way opioid narcotics may be prescribed. They argue that with the proper labels on prescription painkillers, physicians would be more aware of the safety concerns and effectiveness of certain opioids before unnecessarily prescribing highly addictive narcotics to patients for minor pain. So there is a growing consensus, I think, out there to do this and do it now.
Well, we have heard you and your concerns, and we take them very seriously, and those of other stakeholders as well. As you know, we have taken steps with respect to some aspects of the labeling of opioids, the REMS that has been applied to the class of opioid drugs, voluntary requirements as part of that on physician education, which I think is absolutely key. We're hoping that there will be legislation that will actually include mandatory training as part of the DEA licensing for physicians who use these products, because they are so powerful, both in effective treatment when indicated, but also the potential for abuse. And we will be coming forward with a specific response to your question very soon.
Well, I thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.